this way. I'm sorry, I may just move over one seat. No, I'm sorry, I'm like going blind.
Oh, wow. I didn't know.
Let there be light. Thank you.
But this is giving so much light.
Oh, I think it's fine. Oh, darn. I think it's good.
Yes, I saw 2 weeks back. Maybe
Yeah.
less.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to flip between, I'm just going to point out a few different verses from the different chapters of Megillas Esther,
Good.
and we're going to discuss them.
Can we write on this? Or do
Yeah, no,
you want
yours.
us to return
Yours,
it?
yeah, no,
Oh,
totally yours. And so I didn't bring the entire Megillah, obviously, but I just brought the verses that we're going to be discussing, okay? So Megillas Esther is such a beautiful and deep, and it just has so many secrets in there. It's like so much fun discussing it. I always love discussing it and reading and learning of all the different insights and meanings. Because at its like surface level, it's a really cool story. Like, what a great story! And you know what? You're never allowed to ask questions about stories, but this story, we're gonna ask all the questions. We're gonna ask away. Okay, so let's just get going. So in chapter 1, let us read verse 5 through 8. Does anyone want to read?
In Hebrew or English?
We'll just read it in English.
And from the beginning, you mean, and when these days were over,
Yeah.
the king made
Oh, I
for
have
all
to
the people
stop that.
present in Shushan the capital, for everyone, both great and small, a banquet for 7 days in the court of the garden of the king's orchard. There were spreads of white, fine cotton and blue, embroidered with cords of linen and purple, on silver rods and marble columns, couches of gold and silver, on a pavement of green, white, shell, and onyx marble.
Ooh.
And they gave
Oh my God, I'm sorry, it's breathtaking.
I know.
And they gave them to drink in golden vessels, and the
Oh.
vessels differed from one another, and royal wine was plentiful according to the bounty of the king. And the drinking was according to the law, with no one coercing, for so had the king ordained upon every steward of his house to do according to every man's wish.
Okay, who wishes they had a house and a party like that? Like, come on.
Whoa.
Like, look at this description.
Achilloyodea.
Couches of gold and silver and pavement of green, white shell. I mean, this is like,
Opulent.
it's
yeah.
not normal. And it's going on and describing, and the vessels, and everyone had a
Sure.
different vessel, and everyone was able to drink however much they wanted. So the question we see here is, why does the Megillah have to go into so much detail about this party? So in some stories, sometimes you have all these details in the beginning, like a good novel. There's all these details in the beginning, and you don't really know where it's taking you. And then probably in the later chapters is somewhere in the middle. Oh, now I know why they said all these details in the beginning. It all adds up. But if you read through the Megillah, there isn't really an ending point, and we're like, oh, that's why they needed gold couches at the party. That's why everyone needed 5 glasses for every different wines. Oh, that's why we had to sit on the most lavish marble. Like, there is no end picture where we see, so why all the detail? And it's not describing the most beautiful Beit Knesset or shul. It's describing Achashverosh's party, which eventually got the Jews in trouble. So, like, what are we going in all these details for? And it just seems so irrelevant. And one of the things that we learn from this is that in our life, we have so many details of our life that seem so irrelevant. Why are we spending so much time on laundry? Why are we spending so much time on the dishes? And it's literally endless, all the amount of stuff that we have to do. You know, now it's Pesach and we're going through all of our stuff in our house, and it's just like, how did I even accumulate all of this stuff? Just stuff and stuff and stuff. And even if it's good stuff, it's just, how is this relevant to my life, right? We all know the sparks of joy. Are you guys into that thing? It's this way of organizing your house. It's like everyone's into this now, where the way you organize it, you look at it and say, oh, does this spark you joy? And if it doesn't spark you joy,
that is so gorgeous.
And if it doesn't spark you joy, you say thank you and you get rid of it. And if it sparks you joy, you keep it in your house and you keep using it. It's actually like amazing.
It's brilliant.
Yeah, it's a really great method. So, but the idea is like, there's so many things there's so much stuff, there's so much details that really don't spark us joy, and they seem so irrelevant to our lives. And why, we should be spending time on important stuff. We should be spending time on learning, on good productive things, but there's so much details that we don't even see an end goal, an end picture. And the lesson here is really intellectual humility. Where, you know what? Sometimes there's a lot of details in our life where we don't see the end picture. We don't see where it comes around. We don't see where it's like, oh, that's why my washer broke for the 5th time and my laundry pile is, for the next 3 days. I'm so happy that it broke. Do we say that? How often do we say that? How often do we see the full picture coming around? Barely. And if it does, we're so thankful. And this is the lesson here. It's like, you know what? In the Megillah, every single word is important. I'm sure the Megillah would have been pages and pages longer if we would have written every single detail of the story and who thought this and who thought that. However, but every word that was included in the Megillah is there for a specific reason. So why is this here? We don't really know. But it's part of a bigger picture. It's part of being humble and saying not every detail that seems irrelevant is really irrelevant. There's a lot of details in our lives that really contribute to a bigger picture, even if we don't always connect to it or feel it or understand it. And I think a lot of us actually know this, that really life is lived within these small details. The way you go to the bakery and the guy answers you in the most obnoxious way, right? We all live in Israel, we know how that feels. And it's like, why do I have to start my day like that? That was so irrelevant. Like, why did that have to happen?
So
you know
you
what?
could smile.
Exactly, right? It's so irrelevant. It's so frustrating.
That's the only way to do it.
It really is. And us
God
Americans,
forbid,
it's just
I've
like...
lived here so long that I don't notice anyone being rude anymore. They're all just being super nice and friendly.
Oh, good.
I
not
love
rude at
that.
all.
Well, I'd like
We'll
to
get
hear that
there.
translation.
We'll get there.
They're just being totally honest and frank with you, just as if it was your brother instead of the guy who works in the bakery. It's
Right.
a different way of relating.
Right.
It's not rude at all.
No, or it's like, the car behind you is like beeping, get out of the way, get out of the way. And then you're getting upset, what is it beeping at me, whatever. And then the guy comes out of the car, oh, brother, what's up, man? That's like Israel. But, okay, so let's just sum up this point. The point here is that the details in our life matter, even if they seem irrelevant, and even if we don't see the end picture, the way it comes together at the end. It is important, even the gold tablecloths that we put on our Shabbos table, even that one flower that fell off that didn't have water, all of those are important and are relevant in our lives. So that is our first Megillah insight. Any questions or thoughts?
Yeah.
Sure.
When you asked before, why do we have to go down into this? I think you used the word lush, because if you didn't, that's the word that I wrote down. In this lush detail, and the image that came up for me was literally going down in size, so that we were not just in contact with the velvet cloth, but we were so tiny, we were in between the lushness of the velvet. And then when you think of that as 1,000 times bigger than an average cell, then you see the gems that God gave us. And in Purim, we're re-exposed to those gems.
Wow.
It's really, it's a great gift to be here. Thank you.
Wow, I love how you see everything through a scientific lens. It's really...
It's God, it's
amazing.
God's lens.
Okay,
Fine.
let's move to chapter 2,
Recording.
verse 7. Gila, you want to read the English?
And he had brought up Hadassah, that is Esther, his uncle's daughter, for she had neither father nor mother. And the maiden was of comely form and of comely appearance. I guess that also means of comely behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And when her father and mother died, Mordecai took her to himself for himself as a daughter.
So this is when we are introduced to Esther. Esther is not brought up in the beginning of the story. The beginning of the story is all about Achashverosh and his party and Esther. And here, boom, Esther, come into the picture. Who are you? And the way it describes Esther, Vihi Omen es Hadassah, he Esther. That Hadassah is Esther. What does that mean, that Hadassah is Esther?
The Hadassah is hidden.
That what?
The Hadassah is hidden.
Hadassah is hidden. So Esther had two names,
That's
Esther
there.
and Hadassah. And Hadassah was her Hebrew name, and Esther was her Persian name. Esther is actually not a Hebrew. Now it was just accepted into the name of Hebrew names. My daughter's Esther, but Esther is more of an Aramaic name. It's not in its source Hebrew. So here, what it's talking about is that Hadassah is Esther. So just technically, those are the same two people that we're talking about. If we say Hadassah or we say Esther, it's the same person. Now, on a deeper level, we have two names here. Hadassah, the Hebrew name, it is the part of ourself, the part of our soul that is connected. The part of ourself that's connected with our soul. It's how our soul is in its purest form. It's how our soul and ourself is in just this sense of truth and how it's back up with God. No problems. We're not involved in any worldly frustrations. It's just our soul in its most epic place, right? Back with God in purity and godliness and holiness and just no falsehoods of this world. And Esther, the Persian name, is a part of ourself that's associated with the world. We have, however holy we could be on a mountaintop, we still have to pay our bills, right? We still have to make food. We still have to engage in the world.
Where does that come out from, those two different ideas?
Because Esther is her Persian name. It was like her worldly name. Mm-hmm. And Hadassah is her Hebrew name. It was connected with our souls. I mean, many of us have a Hebrew name.
Did her parents give her the name Esther, and her Hebrew name was given by Mordechai? Hadassah. Yo? I don't remember, but I do think so.
I don't know who gave her which name. It doesn't really specify who gave her which,
no, not here. It doesn't
Esther
specify here, but I think later in the text.
So what we learn here is that Hadassah he Esther, that our spiritual self, that the part of ourself, our Hebrew name, our more, the part of ourself that's connected with our soul, our more soulful part of ourself, is the one and the same as our worldly interactions, our Persian or worldly disposition. And just as our soul is in its purest and holiest form up there in the upper world, so too it's going to be expressed within our worldly self down here as well. Meaning we don't have two selves. We don't have, the way I interact in shul and the way I interact with work. I have, here I'm Hadassah, here I'm Esther, and this is how I am here, and this is how I am there. No, we're one being. And our Hadassah is expressed within the Esther. Our soul can and should be expressed within our worldliness, within our frustrations, within all of the falsehoods of the world, within all of the confusion. We could bring an element of truth within the worldliness. Are you following?
The lush overlay.
I feel like you want to share something. You have to. I always want to hear what you want to share. Why?
No, Esther is hidden.
Lastir.
And Hadassah, I don't know where that word comes from. It doesn't ring any bells in me.
Hadassah is a myrtle branch. Hadass.
Right, but this
The shore she's very connected to. I don't know either. I was thinking about that also. Like Esther, we know it's set there is hidden.
Right. Well, Hadassah, because it's a myrtle branch, it's the concept of giving off. So there's like the hidden, the Esther, which is like more within, and then there's the expression of it. So really both names are almost opposites. There's the expression, the giving off of a sense and a smell, and then there's the Esther, the more hidden. And really those are two different types of personalities, right?
Esther, Esther's not hidden. That's the worldly outward self. Esther is hiding Hadassah.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because that's the point here too, that Esther is her worldly self.
Yeah.
But that's the point, that our worldly self, unfortunately, sometimes can't cover. Say again?
We have to hide ourselves.
Yes, that's what I was going to say.
We have to hide ourselves?
Yes.
Why?
Because.
Oh, danger.
Yes.
Thank
of
you.
danger.
Danger lurks. There's no ignoring it, unfortunately.
I can't, I mean, I don't know, I can't walk out as myself to the streets because I'm afraid I'll get too many injuries on the street. So I come out in my costume.
So look, I mean,
You
I think that there's a certain
My
level.
costume. Huh?
No, you mean falling?
No, just injuries from
No, I do
people,
understand.
you know,
Makot, can.
saying things, doing things, I don't know.
Well, look, there's a certain sense of protection that we need
Cure
to
in
have,
real
and
time,
like
that's what
you
it
know,
comes up.
you're not going to just run into the street. You're going to wait and you're going to see to make sure there's no cars. We have to be smart about going outdoors, but we can't be scared.
No,
If
but
we're
I have to be
scared,
very smart.
you have to be very smart and you have to be very careful. But to put on a different or to walk down the street in armor so that by mistake, if a car, then we could drive ourselves nuts, and that's also not what God wants of us.
Right, but just hidden. I keep myself hidden when I'm out on the street. I'm with other people in the store and so on. I see a nice face. Hello, and then back to my hiddenness.
Yeah, look, it's not easy. It's not an easy world to
Besides,
to
I'd
be
be
in.
disturbing to people. if
No,
I
you
were
would
kissing.
never.
Yes.
Look, it's definitely not an easy world to know to just be ourselves in the public and not get hurt or not get confused. And we also don't want to just be covered up at home and just not fulfill our purpose in the world either. So it's a very hard balance, and really, I think that that's the mission in our life, to find that place of where do we have to take risks, where do we have to feel confident, and where do you have to just be smart and be protective of yourself and your family. But that's also what Esther and Hadassah here is teaching us, that our Hadassah doesn't have to be covered and kept sheltered. Spirituality will only take place in my spiritual world, and my workplace will only be my workplace, and my children will only be this. No, we're one cohesive being. Hadassah, he, Esther. All of our interactions, our worldly interactions, our spiritual interactions are all the expression of the same self, are all expressions and connections of godliness, of ourselves, and connecting those two. So that's the lesson that we learn here, that Hadassah, he, Esther, that we are one and the same in every given situation. And making that merge of our two different lives, it shouldn't be different lives, but of our two different places is really difficult. You know, finding a place where you feel comfortable, finding a place where you can just be yourself. It's not easy, but we have to find those places. We have to find those places that Hadassah, he, Esther, our spiritual, our inner truthfulness of our soul, that purity does find manifestation within this world.
And that is in the Hadass, which does, as you say, grow forth.
Right.
And it reaches out, that myrtle branch reaches out, as well as gives a beautiful scent. It grows into the world.
So imagine we never gave the Hadassah, the myrtle branch, a chance to give its smell. I shouldn't put it in the world, and then we would never use it. But no, the Hadassah, the myrtle branch, has to be able to express its smell. You know, we use it in the lulav. So when we're given the chance to express our inner parts of our soul in the right way, then that's really when we're able to make the merge. Okay, this is a really interesting one. When we move to, we're still in chapter 2, verse 20. Doctor, you want to read?
Oh, sorry, I first have to find it.
It's on
Chapter 2, verse 20. Oh, I see where it says Esther
Yeah.
would not tell her lineage
Mm-hmm.
or her nationality, as Mordecai had commanded her. For Esther kept Mordecai's orders as she had when she was raised by him.
So this is like, wow, we got a nice obedient lady over here, right? She is just listening to Mordecai's orders right and left. Mordecai is this like classic rabbi telling people what to do, giving us orders. Yalla, who's following the rabbi? And Esther is just, you know, this charmful, sweet lady, and she's just going by the orders. This is what you say. Okay, I'm going to do it. It's a pretty sad picture.
So she grew up in his house. She knew, you know.
Right. I mean, well, obviously we're going to learn what the deeper meaning to it, but like, I think if you look at it on a very external level, and this is actually how a lot of people in the world look at the Megillah, as this just like this sweet, beautiful lady just like listens to this guy that's telling her to go into the king's palace and just do what you're told and listen to orders and keep marching forward. But let's learn the deeper level of really what does it mean that Esther was
deeper.
Of course, of what was Esther listening to Mordecai's orders. Such a good lady listening to orders. Come on, we all know that there's something deeper than that. So we're going to go into a different topic to answer this one. So it's very interesting because what was Haman's complaint against the Jews? Haman's complaint was, listen, Ahasuerus, listen, man, there's this nation that keeps their own dietary laws, they keep kosher, and they have their own calendar, and they're just all over controlling our country, and we can't have these people around. They're just doing their own thing. Who are these people that think that they could just have their own calendar and run their own show? And we only eat this way, and we only eat that way. What are these people? Let's get rid of them. And Ahasuerus says, that's true. There's really a whole nation of people that's living amongst us that's just running their own show. Not happening. And now let's continue looking at the story. When Esther goes to plead Ahasuerus that Haman's thoughts and what he wanted was just complete, utter stupidity, does she answer any of Haman's complaints? So Haman had a complaint. Now somebody wants to come and say, no, that's not true. They should answer the complaint. But what did Esther say? All Esther said was, Ahasuerus, please save my people. And Ahasuerus was like, who would ever want to kill you? That's horrible. But we don't see anywhere in the text that Esther actually answers what Haman's complaints were. It's like, okay, fine, give me a reason why. And what we see here is the deeper thing, is that everything that Haman said was true, besides his conclusion. Yes, we do eat differently. Yes, we have our own calendar, and it's very deep. Actually, last class, we had the whole class about what is the deeper meaning behind the Jewish calendar and the fact that we're connected with the moon. But yes, it is true.
Women, specifically. All of us in terms of counting the mitzvah. But
and our calendar is primarily based on the lunar cycle.
And our biology.
Exactly. So all of these complaints that Haman says was actually very true. And the way that Esther answered it was just so beautiful. How did she answer these complaints? She was telling Ahasuerus, look, I want you to save my people. Look at me. You chose me out of all the thousands of girls in this Persian country, and Persians are very beautiful. I'm actually Persian. That you could have chosen, but you chose me, a product of the Jewish people. This is what we produce. And this is what you chose. So do you really think that the answer to a nation that's a little bit different is destruction? This is what you chose. You chose the epitome of beauty, spiritually, physically, because you were able to see how deep Judaism is, how Jewish women are, and who Jewish women are. You're the one that chose it. So she didn't even need to answer. She was the living proof. Meaning she herself was the answer to Haman's destruction, to Haman's thoughts of this is just a terrible nation to have. And just by her existence and the fact that she was in the palace, she was really able to show Ahasuerus that, hey, look, you even see for yourself. You chose a Jewish woman, a product of the Jewish nation, to be your queen, because you were able to see through and to see the beauty that Yiddishkeit brings out within the Jewish women. And really, we see here the power of the Jewish women. And it's called Megillas Esther, right? There's many reasons why it's called Megillas Esther. But this brings out once again, that it was the power of the Jewish woman that was able to really show and be the proof of Jewish continuity. It's not only, there's so many reasons of Jewish continuity, but the Jewish women and what we produce and what Yiddishkeit brings to the picture with our calendar, with our kosher laws, with all of our 613 mitzvahs, this is what we produce, and we are the reason to keep Yiddishkeit alive. We don't need to bring any other reasons. Each and every one of us is the proof for Yiddishkeit to be surviving and thriving within our societies.
Ken Yeratzon.
Oh, yeah. Time to the Jewish women.
Amen.
Any thoughts, questions on that?
Well, I would just jump right into the relationship between Mordecai and Esther, and that if they weren't both prophetic, at least Mordecai certainly had the knowledge that what he was doing was preparing Esther for her future in the castle, in the sanctum, where there are situations in which there's only one answer. It's quite extraordinary, because what you're doing is putting yourself in a more narrow environment, where the only answer finally will be, shall I go to the right or the left? Shall I do to the good, or should I do to the bad? Shall I be chesed, or shall I be divorced? And then you understand this.
Well, look, that's a very interesting thought, because it's going to segue right into our next. Oh, actually, we're going to do something else before that. Okay, so chapter 3.
Oh, sorry.
But hold on to that thought, because it will actually connect to another thing that we're going to learn. Okay, so chapter 3, verse 2. And all the king's servants who were in the king's gate would kneel and prostrate themselves before Haman, for so has the king commanded. Now, we all know that what was the whole
Right. He didn't bow
the
down.
whole source of the issue of Haman's issue with the Jewish people was that
Mordecai
didn't
bow
bow.
down.
Wow, my gosh. That was just the most frustrating
Oh.
experience for Haman. Hurting his ego, like, who can hurt Haman's ego? Who can hurt our egos? Every time someone has a little step on our ego, we're like freaking out, right? It's very hard to handle a little strike at our ego. So what was this all about? So the Arizal actually says, so he says that when Haman would tell Mordecai to bow down, Haman would say, hey, listen, Mordecai, your ancestor Yaakov actually bowed down to Esav. So you don't have to be holier than Yaakov, your ancestor, and you should bow down to me. So let's wind back. When did Yaakov bow down to Esav?
When he was
Yaakov
approaching
bowed down
him.
to Esav. I didn't think that he bowed down to him. But I thought
Actually,
that when they were approaching, I didn't think he bowed down to him. I thought that this man named him.
So Yaakov
I
actually
don't
bowed down to
remember
Esav.
the
Maybe
actual
after the
words.
pasuk we're going to look inside
Yeah.
to see that pasuk. And Arizal says that and Mordecai would tell this to Haman also, is that when Yaakov bowed down to Esav, it was really a gesture of peace. You know, and we actually have this within the Jewish people till today, that we first and foremost want peace. And whatever to bring that, that's what we're going to try first. We don't run to war. War is the last option, right? And Yaakov tried that first. And now it's coming back, Haman saying, hey, look, Yaakov bowed down to Esav Yalla, don't be holier than thou. So, and Mordecai would answer him and would say, listen, I'm a descendant of Binyamin. Mordecai was a descendant of the tribe of Binyamin. And Binyamin was not yet born when Yaakov bowed down to Esav, because Binyamin was born when they already crossed over the Yarden. There was only 11 at that point. Yosef was the youngest one. And therefore, because because his forefather did not bow down, he is rectifying the fact that Yaakov bowed down to Esav. He will not bow down to Haman. So this is like a little story of like a Gilgal, of like past and previous situations really replaying themselves today. There's nothing new under the sun. We're all replaying and learning from past experiences. And so this is what the Arizal says, that Haman was a Gilgal of Esav, and Mordecai was a Gilgal of Yaakov, basically replaying that scene that he will not bow down. So I just thought that was really interesting, of this idea of like rectifying different situations of the past. And sometimes we actually find ourselves in situations and it's like, wow, okay, I am rectifying this, and we don't really know where or what, but there's definitely a story of Gilgalim, yeah?
I heard that story taken to a different little party place.
Yeah.
And that was that these children of Yosef, his children, that because they were not involved in that bowing down to
True.
Esau, that that Haman hasn't got nothing on them.
It's true. It's true. I mean, regardless, Haman doesn't have anything on anybody at any time, right? Like even within Gilgulim,
Delusion is thick.
like even within Gilgulim, which is like a whole different topic, you still have your choice. You know, nothing coerces you to do something because in our previous lives, you know, like that's what's a little bit scary about going into these things, because sometimes it becomes this like an excuse. Oh, well, in my previous life I was like this, so now I have to do this, right? Which is sometimes true, which is sometimes not, which is sometimes we just don't know. So it's right. Like at the end of the day, Yosef and all his children and all of the children of Yaakov had nothing to do with what Yaakov did, right? Everyone is their own independent being. But at the same time, we all are all bigger picture, and we are products of our parents and our grandparents and our great-grandparents, and we're all living the same life and in the same world, and we do have connections.
Baruch Hashem.
Yeah, for the good and for the worse. Okay. Let us go to verse 8 in chapter 2. And Haman said to Achashverosh, "There's a certain people scattered and separate among the peoples throughout all the provinces of your kingdom, and their laws differ from those of every people, and they do not keep the king's laws. It is therefore no use for the kings to let them be." Okay, so we discussed this a little bit in the different verse. So scattered and dispersed amongst the nation. So the Shalah, he wrote the book, the Shnei Luchot Tabris, who's actually buried in Tiberias, next to the Rambam. I actually think that he lived in Sfat.
Who is he?
And was buried. The Shalah, Shlomo Horowitz, I believe. Shlomo. And he wrote a sefer called Shnei Luchot Tabris, and he's referred to as the Shalah, which is the acronym for Shalah HaKadosh. Which is the acronym for the sefer that he wrote. So he talks about this pasuk, and he says that because the Jewish people were not united, it made them vulnerable to scary situations. And therefore, what was our rectification that we have to do? We have to unite. The scattered, the no unity, everyone living their own life, not caring about each other, no sense of community, no sense of coming together. That's what really got the Jewish people to be vulnerable to whatever was happening around them. But if we commit to being together and to being strong for each other, then we can stand up and be together, and we can get through any situation in life. And therefore, when this decree came upon the Jewish people, Mordechai gathered the Jewish people. And why did he gather them? To pray, but to pray specifically within a unity, within the Jewish people coming together. Because what brought us to this point was dysfunction, was scattered. And there's really a lot that we learn from this, besides for the need of unity, which I think we all know and we all try to do, with people accepting each other and coming together and making places of people feeling comfortable and just coming together. It teaches us a lot about the power of being united and how strong we can be and how scary dysfunction is. And dysfunction and scattered and frazzled and not knowing what's going on and not knowing where I belong and not knowing and just like everyone living in their own hole, in their own cell and not being together can really lead to really scary situations for ourselves and for the Jewish community at large. And just to always keep in mind that within our families, within our communities, to just try to keep together no matter what our differences are, but having a strong foundation, being strong together, we really can get through anything. And dysfunction and scattered and just a mess can really bring to very, very scary situations. And this is what the Shalah HaKadosh teaches us of staying united is what keeps us together.
I'm sorry, that was one of my kids. I can't.
Oh,
man.
That
got
was
it.
going to happen. It's better
Bound
for me at the
happen.
end of the week. They're not with me.
Baruch Hashem. Baruch
Bye, good
Hashem.
night. Thanks, Sarah.
Call too.
Okay, so that is scattered and dispersed amongst the nations. The next
What an image.
one. Okay, this is an amazing one. This is like one of my favorites. So in chapter 4, Doctor, do you want to read 13, 14, 15, and
with
16?
pleasure. Chapter 4 from 15.
From 13 to 16.
Oh, 13 to 16. Oh, that's funny. Okay. And Mordecai ordered to reply to Esther, "Do not imagine to yourself that you will escape in the king's house from among all the Jews. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and rescue will arise for the Jews from elsewhere, and you and your father's household will perish. And who knows whether at a time like this you will attain the kingdom." Then Esther ordered to reply to Mordecai, "Go, assemble all the Jews who are present in Shushan, and fast on my behalf, and neither eat nor drink for 3 days, day and night. Also I and my maidens will fast in a like manner. Then I will go to the king contrary to the law, and if I perish, I perish."
This is like really intense, and I would say one of the climax moments of the Megillah, where Mordecai is like is pleading with Esther, "Please just go to the king, go to the king," and Esther's like, "I don't know if I can do this. I just don't know." And Mordecai is like, kind of guilt trips her into this. And let's look at this. Is this really a guilt trip? Kind of feels scary, feels really intense. Like, if you're not going to do this, then who's going to save us,
Can you read
right?
the Hebrew?
Which part?
That 15, 4:15.
Vatomer Esther,
Yes.
Lahashiv el Mordecai. To return to Mordecai. Because they weren't able to speak directly. So they spoke through a messenger. So they would send messengers
Right.
through, his name was Hataf. So,
The English is just strange.
yeah, the English is never as good as the Hebrew.
Never.
So let's look into this. So Mordecai tells her 2 points. His first point is, if you remain silent at this time, relief and rescue will arise for the Jewish people from elsewhere.
Beautiful.
And you and your father's house will perish. Meaning, I believe in God. And if you don't want to do this,
That's pretty
you know what?
intense.
We will get help from somewhere else. I don't believe, and we're just going to keep trusting in God. But then he adds in the second point. Why did he have to add in the second point? And who knows whether at the time like this you will attain the kingdom? And who knows? Maybe this is why you were chosen to be the queen. Now, when you read the Purim story, it's like the most obvious thing. The Jewish people had this decree. There was a Jew in office. Go save the day. But this story happened over some time, and it wasn't like as obvious. Oh, Queen Esther, that's why you became the queen. So you could save the Jewish people. And if you don't do this, then why do you even think you're there? Right? Obviously, now when we read this, it sounds like the most obvious option. But while it's happening, Esther's like, listen, I don't know if this is the right option. It might actually be, it might look like the very smart option, but maybe it's not the right option. And Mordecai tells her 2 details. Firstly, I believe in God. Secondly, maybe this is why you were chosen to be the queen. Why did he need the 2? The first one was enough. I believe in God, and you know what? If you don't do it, then relief will come from elsewhere. Why did he add in the second part? And the second part teaches us that destiny is the most powerful thing. You can't argue with somebody's destiny. Meaning, there is a situation erupted, we need your help. Sorry, I can't help right now. Like, there's a lot of other people, there's a lot of different ways you can get help. Not every time can we say yes. We can't say yes to every situation. However, when that situation and when you are needed comes from a place that is specifically connected with your gift to the world, you don't have a choice. Because this is your destiny. This is why you were created. Now, all the 613 mitzvahs are our destiny. However, we all have a specific gate where we personally connect with. We all have something personal that makes us more personally connected with, if it's a certain mitzvah, if it's a certain person, if it's a certain event, whatever it is that we feel personally connected with. I feel more connected with Shabbos. I feel more connected with tzedakah. And when we find that gate that we are most connected with, we are obligated even more to fulfill that, because that is our destiny. That is our mission in the world. And that is why Esther was convinced. Esther wasn't convinced with the first one. We believe in God, please help us out. Okay, maybe the answer is not me. But when Mordecai tells her, listen, Esther, maybe this is your destiny. Maybe this is your soul's mission. Maybe this is why you were in the palace from the first place. And with that, Esther couldn't argue. Esther said, wow, maybe this is my mission. Maybe this is my personal connection. Maybe this is my gate to connect to Hashem. Maybe this is my gate to fulfill my mission in this world. And with that, we don't have any arguments. And with that, Esther went straight ahead and she said, go assemble the Jewish people in Shushan to fast. And we'll talk about that also. But with that, Esther was convinced. Because we can't play around with our destiny. And I actually really believe in that, is that if there are things, there's so much to contribute in the world. There's so much to do, there's so much to offer, there's so many this and that. But you know what? Sometimes you have to say yes and sometimes you have to say no. How do you know when you're supposed to say yes and how do you know when you're supposed to say no? It is the dynamite question. Whoever has the answer, please let me know, right? That it's like just so hard. How do you say yes and how do you say no? So I'm a very big fan of, if anything that you personally contribute to, say, that will make a difference with your personal talents and thoughts and feelings, say yes. If somebody else could do it equally as good as you, you don't have to say yes. Get somebody else to do it. Get help or another situation. But if it has to do, again, with your destiny, with your gift to the world, you can't pass up your gift to the world. No one else can contribute and can accomplish what you personally can accomplish. And this is really what Esther was showing us, is that we need to be brave enough to look out and open our eyes and see what is our gift to the world and what is our gate with connecting to Hashem, and to focus on that and to always say yes to that.
Our value should be so exposed.
I know.
Last year.
Okay, I think we're going to stop now.
Wow.
Obviously,